check. As you know, 3 minutes, and the yellow light will come on when you have 30 seconds, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, Commissioners.
Good morning.
I want to talk about the Sunshine Lake situation, Mr. Chairman. I think what's Ms. Smart, who I haven't met, but she touched on it a little bit. I don't. Everybody's concerned about the money, and that's obviously an issue. But a little history, would go a long way to understanding the situation. We talked about this last time in my remarks about, people have to be held accountable for their actions. People are suffering because people didn't do their job. And I'd like to talk about how this could happen in this small community for multiple years, that nothing was done. This situation is not an overnight situation. This went on for years and years, and nobody did anything. And so there's a moral aspect to this. These people are suffering. How many times has Joanne come into this room? Michelle back there. These women are sick, Commissioner Duffy, and they've asked for help for years, and nothing was done. Somebody has to be held accountable for this. In my mind, this is clear. If something went seriously wrong at your company, Mr. Chairman, leave aside the moral, the financial aspect, you would probably remove them from office. But what happens if you did an engineering project, sir, and somebody was killed or somebody seriously injured? Okay? We don't know what the effect of these cyanobacteria are going to have long term on these people. If Dr. Constance did something bad in his office, or one of his doctors did something bad, these doctors would be held accountable. To me, I don't understand how we can have a culture in this county where a poisoned lake, gobs of it, where Atkins can tell you he's never seen anything like this, and this can go on for years. So for me, people have to be held responsible, and history tells me that this is the administration. This is Mr. Sandrock's department. Okay, he controls CCU. Well, he doesn't control it. He supervises CCU. He supervises Ms. Kuchar, who I'm sure you're aware, I think is unqualified for that position. And this is part of the problem, is that Mr. Sandrock is not held accountable. The staff is not held accountable. Nobody's removed from office. Nobody's removed from their position. And then what other mistakes are made? I think, Mr. Chairman, one other thing to think about. What other mistakes have been made under Mr. Sandrock's leadership? What other liabilities are we going to face as taxpayers because Mr. Sandrock or Ms. Knowlton is not doing their job? Morally speaking, these people are sick. They need our help, and it's not getting done, sir. So I'd like the board to consider that part of it. Thank you for your time, Mr. Chairman.
Any comments, direct them to the entire board, not to specific board members.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Continuing on my theme earlier about responsibility in this county, Mr. Chairman, again, I don't enjoy being here. It's just one of the worst parts of my job was firing managers. I did not enjoy that, but comes at a point where we think, for the good of the company, we have to do it. I'm going to give you several examples. We already talked about the hardship program, but the administration of Charlotte County Utilities and things related to it. This was the FDEP order, FACA C895, the agreement with Charlotte County to monitor the water quality in the Alligator Bay area was not done. The MSBU for Spring Lake, who inserted the secret blank check clause that allows CCU to come back 2 years later, 3 years later, and increase the cost on us? This is awful. Who would, if you were doing the job for Mr. Steinbrenner up in Yankee Stadium and you told him you're going to come back in a couple of years and give him the price, what would he say to you? I think you understand my meaning on that one, sir. The hardship program, not in effect. Supposedly starting January 1st, not happening. We had the interview on NBC2, which Mr. Sandrock said was just a misunderstanding. But I have his email correspondence 2 months before with Mr. Eigelhart, and he asks Mr. Eigelhart multiple times about the consent order, the consent order, the consent order. I want to be sure about the consent order. And then Mr. Eigelhart writes back to him and says, Ray, I'm a bit confused. Is there a consent order? And of course, there is no consent order. We all know there's no consent order. We had public records disclosure saying there was no consent order. And yet 2 months later, Mr. Sandrock goes in front of the NBC2 camera and says there's a consent order forcing us to put in the Spring Lake sewers. So all of these things combined, it's not a one-off issue. I always told my managers, you get one break. Obviously, you're not going to be stealing or anything like that, but we're liable for what he does, okay? And now we've got the Rotunda 2 lawsuit, which all you know we have lost. Decisions made by this board are going to, and Mr. Sandrock and the attorney as well, her advice to this board is to continue these lawsuits. How much is this going to cost us? I'm told now we might have to pay up to $100 million for this Rotunda 2 lawsuit. What does it take to get fired in this county? How much incompetence can the taxpayers stand?
Okay,
So we need a vote to remove Mr. Sandrock from office. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate that.
Okay, this is citizen input